Look at what is in front of you. The empty account, the unpaid bill, the job that does not pay enough, the walls of the room you wish were larger, the car that needs work you cannot afford, the phone you have been meaning to replace. Look at these. They are real. They have weight. They produce a feeling in the body that is hard to argue with. Now hear what I am about to say, and let it land slowly. None of that is your wealth. That is the residue of an old assumption. That is the outer world catching up with a state you have already moved on from or are about to. That is yesterday, made visible. To take it as evidence of what you are, or what you can have, or what your life can become, is to be deceived by the slowest part of the universe. The outer world is always behind. It is the report, not the source. By the time circumstances arrange themselves into something visible, the cause has already been planted, set, and forgotten. What you see is the harvest of seeds you sowed in your inner conversations weeks, months, years ago. To measure yourself by the harvest is to be ruled by your own past. And you were not made to be ruled by your own past, you were made to plant. So when you look at the bank balance and feel the old chill move through you, understand what you are actually looking at. You are looking at the result of every quiet assumption you held about money in the months that produce this number. The number is not a verdict. The number is a receipt. And you are still holding the pen. Stop reading the receipt as if it were prophecy. The wealth that matters lives in the assumption, not in the visible, not in the present appearance. The visible is the consequence of the invisible, always in that order. To get this order wrong is to spend a life hostage to circumstances that you yourself, in a quieter chamber of consciousness, were busy creating. I want to slow down here because the mind resists this. The mind says, but the bills are real. The mind says, I cannot pay rent with assumption. The mind insists on the primacy of the visible because the mind has been trained by the visible and to consider the possibility that the visible is downstream of something else feels to the mind like a dangerous irresponsibility. It is not irresponsible. It is the actual order of how things move. And every person who has ever risen out of a difficult situation has, whether they knew it or not, done so by refusing to take the present appearance as final. They held an assumption that contradicted what was in front of them, and they remained faithful to that assumption long enough for the outer world to catch up. That is the only mechanism. There is no other. You think the people who escaped poverty earned their way out through effort. You think they hustled, strategized, networked, optimized. They appear to have done all of those things. But underneath the doing was a state. The state assumed wealth before the wealth arrived. The state was fulfilled before the conditions were fulfilled. The doing was the outer expression of an inner already having, and that is why the doing worked when the same doing, performed by someone in a state of lack, would have produced nothing. Two people can take the same action and receive opposite results, not because the universe is unfair, because the state behind the action is what determines the result of the action. State first, action second, outcome third. You have been trying to get the outcome by working harder on the action while the state remained unchanged. The action will never make up for the state. It cannot. It is not designed to. So measure yourself differently. Do not measure yourself by what is in the account. Measure yourself by what you assume is true about money. Do you assume scarcity? Do you assume abundance? Do you assume that money is hard to come by? Do you assume that you are someone for whom money flows easily? Do you assume that wealth is for other people? Do you assume that your life is, in its core, supported, abundant, and held? Whatever you assume is what you are growing. The current account balance is what you grew last season. You can grow a different account this season, but you have to plant differently. You have to assume differently. You have to dwell in the wish fulfilled before the fulfillment is visible to anyone, including you. This is the part where most people fail. They look around for evidence that things are changing, and finding none, they go back to the old assumption. They say, well, I tried that for a week and nothing happened. They never realized that a week was nothing. The seed has not even broken the surface of the soil yet. They dug it up to check on it, and in checking on it, killed it. Stop checking, plant the assumption, and walk away. Trust that what is unseen is at work. Trust that the soil knows what it is doing. Trust that the harvest will come in its own time, in its own form, often through channels you could not have predicted. Persist. That is the word. You do not need a new method. You need to persist in the assumption you have already chosen. Persist past the days when the visible is unchanged. Persist past the weeks when nothing seems to be happening. Persist past the months when the old life appears to be exactly the same as before. Persist because the unseen is moving even when the seen is not, and the seen will eventually show you what the unseen has been arranging all along. The wealthy man is wealthy first in his own consciousness. The visible wealth is a side effect of his inner state. You can spot him before the money arrives if you know what to look for. He does not flinch when bills come. He does not refresh his account in fear. He does not measure his worth by the day's deposits. He moves through the world as someone who has, even on the days when, by ordinary measures, he does not have. That state is the wealth. The numbers are catching up to him. You can be that man, that woman, before the numbers turn. You do not have to wait for the visible to give you permission. The visible is not in charge of what you assume you are. Now, I want to address something that troubles people when they first hear this. They say, but if I assume wealth while the bills are unpaid, am I not lying to myself? Am I not in denial? You are not in denial. You are choosing which truth to inhabit at the level where truth gets generated. The visible truth is one truth. It is the truth of what was. There is another truth, the truth of what is being created. Both exist. Both are real. The question is which one you make your home. People who make their home in the visible are perpetually managing what was. They are reactive. They are bracing. They are running calculations on a situation that is already in the past, even though it appears present. They mistake the lag for the law. People who make their home in the assumption are creating what will be. They are not in denial of the visible. They are simply not bound by it. They acknowledge that the bills exist. They pay them when they can. They handle the practical without panic, but they refuse to let the bills define their state. The state is set somewhere deeper by their own choosing, and from that state, new circumstances grow. Be the second kind, not by lying to yourself, by choosing where to dwell. This word, dwell, is important. It is not the same as visiting. Many people visit the wealthy state for a few minutes a day during meditation or affirmation, and then return to dwelling in lack for the other 23 hours. The visit is not enough. The visit is a tourist trip. You have to move in. You have to make the having state your residence. You have to wake up there, walk through your day there, fall asleep there. That is what it means to dwell. When you dwell in the wish fulfilled, the wish fulfills itself, not as a reward for your loyalty, as a natural expression of what you are growing. You cannot dwell in wealth, in consciousness, for long enough without it appearing in the outer world. The outer world has no choice in the matter. It is not the source. It is the mirror. It reflects whatever stands in front of it long enough. Stand in front of it differently. Now, on the matter of present appearances specifically, I want you to look at your life and notice how much of what is in front of you is residue. The walls were rented under an old assumption. The job was accepted under an old assumption. The friendships were formed, the habits established, the budget arranged, all under assumptions you may have outgrown years ago. Most of what surrounds you is not your present. It is your past, made physical, slowly fading. If you measure yourself by what surrounds you, you are measuring yourself by an old self. You are letting the residue of who you used to be dictate who you can become. Stop letting the residue speak for you. The residue is not who you are. It is who you were. You have already in some quieter chamber become someone different. You have in your private moments glimpsed a version of yourself that the visible has not yet caught up to. That version is where your real wealth lives. That version is real. The residue is just slow. Be patient with the slow. Be loyal to the real. Loyalty is the missing word in most people's practice. They are not loyal to the assumption they have chosen. They flicker. 1 hour they are in the having. The next hour they are back in the lack, looking around, despairing, abandoning the assumption at the first sign that the visible has not changed. Then, an hour later, they try again and abandon again and try again. Nothing grows because nothing was given long enough to grow. If you planted a seed and dug it up every day to check, no plant would ever rise. The plant requires that the seed be left alone, in the dark, doing its slow inner work. Your assumption is the same. Plant it. Leave it. Let it work in the soil of consciousness. Do not check, do not audit, do not negotiate with the visible. Just live as someone for whom the assumption is already true, and let the rest take its course. The fact that you cannot see the work happening does not mean it is not happening. It means it is happening at a level you do not have access to. That level does not require your supervision. It does its job better when you stop interfering. Now, what does it actually look like to stop measuring by present appearances? It looks like this. You see the empty account and you do not flinch. You acknowledge it as what was. You return to the state of having. You move through your day from that state. You spend what you have to spend without making it a referendum on your worth. You earn what you earn without making it the ceiling of what is possible. You think about money the way someone with plenty thinks about money, which is to say, mostly not at all. You see the unpaid bill and you do not let it set your nervous system. The bill is information, not destiny. It tells you that something is owed. It does not tell you that you are someone who cannot afford it. The bill has no opinion about who you are. The opinion is yours. You can choose a different one. You see the job that does not pay enough and you do not collapse into the smallness of it. You go to the job. You do the work. You do not pretend the job pays more than it does. But you also do not concede that this job is the measure of your life. The job is a current circumstance. It is not who you are. It is not what you can become. It is one square of a much larger map. You see the small room, and you do not let the smallness of the room shrink your sense of yourself. You live in the room as someone whose interior life is spacious. The room cannot make you small. Only your assumption about yourself can do that. The room is just a room. It has no power over your consciousness unless you grant it that power. You walk past the car that needs work, you note it, you do not catastrophize, you assume that what needs to happen will happen in some way, in some time, through some channel that is not your concern to prearrange. You release the gripping, the car will be addressed. You do not have to manage every detail of how. This is the texture of someone who has stopped measuring by present appearances. It is not a flashy state, it is quiet. It is almost boring from the outside, but underneath the quiet, an enormous shift is taking place. The state is being held steady. The assumption is being protected from the assault of the visible. The new is being grown. Give it time. Give it loyalty. Give it the daily, ordinary practice of returning to the assumption every time you drift back into the visible. You will drift. Of course you will drift. The visible is loud. The visible has been training you for decades. You are not going to overcome that training in a week, but each time you notice the drift, you turn back. Each turn is a small act of loyalty. After enough turns, the having state becomes more familiar than the lack state, and the world begins slowly to reflect the new familiarity. There is a particular trap here that I want to name. People often confuse the having state with imagining a future event. They sit and imagine receiving the money, getting the news, walking into the new house. The imagining is not wrong, but it is not the deepest practice. The deepest practice is not imagining a future event. It is being right now in the consciousness of someone for whom the matter is already settled. The future event you imagine is still ahead of you. The state of already having is now. Now is where the work happens. Now is where the seed is planted. Be in the now of having, not in the visualization of a future receiving. This is a subtle distinction, and it matters. You can spend hours fantasizing about the future without ever actually entering the having state, because fantasy is still a state of wanting. It is dressed up nicely, but underneath, the wanting persists. The having state is different. It does not lean forward toward a future. It rests in a present in which the matter is already concluded. There is nothing to wait for. There is nothing to long for. There is only this, and this is enough, because this is full. Try it now, just for a moment. Stop reaching toward something. Stop visualizing a future event. Simply be a person for whom money is settled. Notice what your body does when you allow that. Notice the small release in the chest. Notice the way the urgency softens. That softening is the state, not the picture in your head, the state in your body. Hold that state. Walk into your day from that state. Make a meal in that state. Have a conversation in that state. Pay a bill if a bill is due from that state. The state is portable. It does not require the right room or the right hour or the right circumstances. It only requires your willingness to remain in it. Persist, dwell, remain faithful. These are not motivational words. They are the actual mechanics of how an assumption hardens into a circumstance. You hold the assumption. You hold it past the early days when nothing changes. You hold it past the middle weeks when the old life still looks the same. You hold it into the months when the visible begins, almost imperceptibly, to shift. You hold it into the moment when the shift becomes obvious, and even then, you do not abandon the holding. You keep holding because the holding is what produced the shift, and the holding is what will keep producing more. The state is not something you reach and leave. The state is something you live in, permanently, from now on. The version of you that lives in the having state has different friends, different opportunities, different conversations, different problems. That version is who you are becoming. The version that lives in the lack state was who you were. Both are real. Only one of them is your future. Choose, daily, hourly, each time the choice arises. I want to give you a small image to carry with you. The man who is rich in consciousness, whatever his current bank balance, walks through the world with a particular ease. He does not cling to deals. He does not fear loss. He does not measure himself against others. He has access internally to a wealth that is not contingent on what is in his account this morning. From that access, he acts. From that ease, he speaks. From that abundance, he gives. And the world, which is always reading the state more than the words, responds to the ease, the access, the abundance. Money flows toward him not because he chases it, but because his consciousness is the kind of consciousness that money can rest in. Be that consciousness. Before the money, now, you do not have to earn it. You do not have to qualify. The consciousness is available to you in this moment, in your chair, in the room you are in. It costs nothing. It requires only that you stop measuring yourself by the residue and start measuring yourself by the assumption. The residue will fade. The assumption will harden into a new visible. You will look around one day and find that the room is bigger, or you have moved to a different room. The job will have changed, or your relationship to it. The account will look different. The bills will be small things, handled. None of it will feel like a miracle. It will feel like the natural unfolding of who you actually are. Because it is. The miracle was always just consciousness expressing itself. There is nothing else. There is no separate force that will rescue you from outside. There is no other agent. The agent is consciousness, and consciousness is yours, and it has been doing exactly what you have been telling it to do, and it will continue to do exactly what you tell it to do. Tell it differently now. Assume wealth, not the future arrival of wealth. Wealth now, as the state in which you live. Imagination, used this way, is the most practical instrument you possess. It is not daydreaming. It is the actual mechanism by which the inner becomes the outer. It is the workshop in which all visible things were first invisible. Use the workshop. Build inside it. Build the wealthy state, the settled state, the abundant state. Build it carefully, daily, faithfully. Do not let the visible distract you from the workshop. The visible is the showroom. The workshop is where the work happens. The showroom only displays what was made earlier. You are in the workshop right now. Every moment is workshop time. Every assumption you hold is a piece of construction. Every state you dwell in is shaping the next showroom. Build well. And the next time you look at the empty account, the unpaid bill, the small room, the inadequate job, take a breath. Acknowledge what is. Then return to the workshop. Return to the state. Return to the assumption. The visible will catch up. It always catches up. That is the only law. That is the entire teaching. You stand in consciousness. The world arranges itself around what you stand in. Stand in wealth. Stand in it now. Stand in it as the most natural fact of your existence. Stand in it the way a tree stands in soil, without effort, without question, without even noticing. That standing is your wealth. The numbers will follow. The numbers always follow. You are not poor, you are not behind, you are not failing. You are simply, perhaps for the first time, becoming aware of the order of things. The order is consciousness first, world second. You have been trying to live in the reverse. The reverse does not work. It exhausts you. It produces the very lack you fear. It cannot do otherwise because it is upside down. Turn it right side up. Stand in consciousness. Assume what you wish. Remain faithful to the assumption. Persist past the visible's protest. Dwell in the wish fulfilled. The wealth was never in the account. The wealth was always in the assumption. You have always had it. You only forgot.